In a dimly lit room at the Reminiscences Hotel, a man sits alone, pen in hand, writing what would be his final note. It's November 28, 1940, and Jesse Livermore, the man who once shattered Wall Street with his brilliance, is about to take his own life. His story is not just about numbers and trades. It's a saga of triumph and tragedy, genius and despair. Livermore was a boy wonder, plucking fortunes from the market with an uncanny ability to read the tape. A man who, in 1907 and again in 1929, saw what others could not. He turned market crashes into personal jackpots, playing the game when few dared to. Yet, amidst the glory, the relentless boom and bust cycles foreshadowed a darker tale, one of fear, hope, and greed. We'll chronicle the rise and fall of this enigmatic trader, delve into his trading philosophies that defied convention, and explore the psychological forces that drove him to both unprecedented success and his ultimate demise. This is the story of Jesse Livermore, a cautionary tale of a man who danced with the markets and paid the ultimate price. Stay with us, because his legacy, like the markets he mastered, is anything but predictable. It's a cold, clear evening in New York City. November 28, 1940. The bustling heart of Manhattan is lit up like a galaxy. Beneath the opulent chandeliers of the Reminiscences Hotel, Jesse Livermore, a man who once held the financial world in the palm of his hand, sits quietly at dinner. He is a legend among traders, a titan whose shadow stretched across Wall Street for decades. Yet tonight, there is a heaviness in his eyes, a weight that he carries alone. He excuses himself, leaving behind the clinking of cutlery and the soft murmur of conversations. He walks slowly, deliberately, as if savoring each step. Past the grand lobby, his footsteps echo down the corridor to the cloakroom. A room where coats and hats hang in silent witness to countless stories. But tonight, it becomes the setting of his final act. Jesse Livermore pauses, draws a breath, and in a moment of solitude, decides his fate. A single, sharp report cracks the stillness. The sound is small, almost lost amidst the city's ceaseless hum. Yet, it reverberates with the enormity of its consequence. Jesse Livermore, the man who once made $100 million in a single day, has ended his life. In his pocket, a note addressed to his wife, Harriet. Words written with a trembling hand, "My dear Nina, can't help it. Things have been bad with me. I am tired of fighting. Can't carry on any longer. This is the only way out. I am unworthy of your love. I am a failure. Failure." It's a strange word for a man who had it all: fame, fortune, the adulation of an entire industry. At the time of his death, Livermore had $5 million in cash, accounts worth millions more. Yet, to him, none of it mattered. None of it could fill the void he felt within. This was a man who had broken Wall Street, who had made and lost fortunes that others could only dream of. A man so powerful that J.P. Morgan himself had begged him to stop shorting the market during the panic of 1907, fearing the very survival of the financial system. A man who, just over a decade later, would stand atop the ruins of Black Tuesday in 1929, richer than ever while others lay devastated. So how did it come to this? A hotel cloakroom, a gun, a note, and an ending that felt so utterly final? This is his story. A story not just of triumph, but of the relentless, unforgiving tides of fortune and despair. It is a story of a man who lived by rules, his rules, forged in the crucible of the bustling trading pits. Rules that brought him unimaginable success, but ultimately could not save him from himself. We will explore these rules, these guiding principles of trading psychology that Livermore lived by, dissect their genius, and perhaps, their flaws. We will unravel the moments that defined him, the days of glory, the nights of loneliness, the inner conflicts that no wealth could resolve. As we journey through the life and mind of Jesse Livermore, we'll see the cautionary tale of a man who climbed higher than anyone dared, only to fall so deeply into the shadows. His life was a testament to the razor's edge between brilliance and madness, between triumph and tragedy. In the world of trading, Jesse Livermore was a pioneer. Yet, he was also a man. A man haunted by his own demons, by the relentless pursuit of something that perhaps could never truly be attained. As we turn the page, we begin to trace the arc of his remarkable life, to comprehend not just how he mastered the markets, but how the markets mastered him. For now, let this moment linger, the image of a man who had it all, but found himself, in the end, with nothing. This is where his story ends. But it is where ours begins. Brace yourself, for what follows is not just the tale of Jesse Livermore. It is an exploration of ambition, the fragility of human endeavor, and the profound complexity of the human mind. A journey through the light and the darkness that dwelled within one extraordinary man. The story of Jesse Livermore is about to unfold. And it will be one you won't soon forget. In the quiet township of Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, the world seemed small, and life was laid out like the furrows of a plowed field. For many, it was a place where destiny was preordained, especially for a boy like Jesse Livermore. Born in 1877, the son of a farmer, his future seemed as predictable as the seasons. His father had his path set, a life tilling soil, tending crops, bound to the earth like generations before him. But young Jesse had other plans. At just 14, with dreams of a world far beyond the horizons of his hometown, Jesse made a decision that would set the course of his life in an audacious direction. He sewed $5 into the lining of his jacket, left his family behind, and headed for the burgeoning city of Boston. It was a bold act, one that spoke volumes of his resolve. Here, within the hustle and bustle of city life, he would find his calling. Boston was alive with the hum of industry and commerce. Among the towering brick facades of its financial district, Jesse found work as a board boy at PaineWebber. His task was seemingly simple: transcribe the endless flow of numbers streaming from the ticker tape onto a chalkboard. But behind this mundane job, Jesse's mind was working overtime, seeing what others could not. The tickers revealed more than just fluctuating prices, they told a story. Jesse noticed that prices moved in patterns, subtle shifts, and rhythms that hinted at what was to come. Most saw just numbers. Jesse saw a language. He began to meticulously record these patterns in a notebook, capturing the pulse of the market with every scribble. It was here, in this chaotic symphony of figures, that Jesse's extraordinary gift began to emerge. His curiosity soon led him to the bucket shops, smoky, crowded parlors where men bet on stock prices without ever touching a share. These were places of risk, and for a young boy with an eye for patterns, they were an irresistible lure. Jesse started small, placing modest bets, testing his theories. But these weren't mere wagers of luck. They were calculated, precise, driven by the patterns he had deciphered from the ticker's song. Within a year, that modest $5 had blossomed into 1,000. It was a staggering sum for a boy not yet old enough to vote. And as his winnings grew, so did his reputation. The bucket shop owners, initially amused by this young upstart, soon gave him a nickname, the Boy Plunger. He was a prodigy, feared and revered, because he simply did not lose. His uncanny ability to anticipate market movements was both a marvel and a menace to those who profited from others' losses. By the age of 20, Jesse Livermore had become a legend among the bucket shops of Boston. His presence was unwelcome, a harbinger of losses for the proprietors who had once indulged his youthful ambitions. He was banned from every bucket shop in the city, his name whispered with a mix of admiration and dread. But Jesse's flair for reading the market was no accident. It was an art form, akin to a musician who could translate notes into a symphony. He saw the tape the way a gifted composer sees music, each number a note, each fluctuation a part of the melody. This was his gift, the ability to read the market's language with an intuitive grasp that few could fathom. It wasn't just about predicting the future, it was about understanding the present with such clarity that the future seemed almost inevitable. As Jesse's reputation grew, so did his ambition. But this was just the beginning. His talent for reading the market would soon propel him into the upper echelons of finance, and onto a stage where the stakes were infinitely higher. The boy who could read the market was ready for his next act. Little did he know, his story was destined for both triumph and tragedy, woven together in a narrative as complex and riveting as the markets themselves. In the chapters to come, Jesse Livermore would become a man who would test the very limits of his genius, playing a game whose rules he seemed to define. But for now, he was just a young man with an extraordinary gift, poised on the precipice of a future that promised both wealth unimaginable and challenges unrelenting. The market had a language, and Jesse was its most gifted interpreter. He was ready to take on the world, one trade at a time. As the chalk dust settled and the numbers danced in his mind, Jesse Livermore had only just begun his ascent. Picture the bustling heart of Wall Street in the early 20th century, a whirlwind of paper, noise, and frenetic energy. In the middle of this storm, a young Jesse Livermore stands calm and composed, eyes fixed on the tape machine. Amid the chaos, he seeks not excitement but clarity. The tape is his oracle, and it whispers truths that others, distracted by the cacophony, fail to hear. The tape never lies. This was the core of Livermore's philosophy, his guiding light in the unpredictable seas of the stock market. While others chased rumors and insider tips, Livermore trusted only what he could see, the cold, hard data of price action. For him, the ticker tape provided a raw, unfiltered view of the market's pulse. It showed him the rhythm of buy and sell, the dance of fear and greed, and the underlying momentum that drove price movements. Livermore understood that opinions were cheap, often misleading, and dangerous. He had no interest in what company executives boasted at their annual meetings, no intrigue in the speculative columns of newspapers, no faith in the whispers of insiders promising secret insights. All that mattered was the tape, the record of actual transactions, where traders staked their fortunes and reputations. It was here, amid the shifting numbers, that the true story of the market unfolded. To Livermore, waiting was an art form. He could sit with zen-like patience, watching, studying, allowing suspicions to simmer until the tape confirmed his theories. Weeks, even months could pass, but he would not act until the market itself told him to. His edge was not hidden information, it was the discipline to wait. Few could match his ability to sit tight, as he famously put it. The market does not beat them. They beat themselves, he said, because though they have brains, they cannot sit tight. Contrast this with the typical investor, swept up in the frenzy of tips and news. The allure of the latest hot stock, the seductive promise of insider knowledge, these temptations snared many. Investors acted on impulse, swayed by headlines and brokers' assurances. They mistook noise for signal, and in doing so, they often sealed their own fates. Livermore's approach was different. He would watch the tape for patterns, waiting for the right moment, a shift in momentum, a breakout, a subtle change in volume that signified deeper currents beneath the surface. When the tape spoke, Livermore listened. And when he acted, it was with the confidence that comes from seeing the bigger picture, from understanding the market's inner workings. This patience was not passive, it was a strategic waiting game, a readiness to pounce when the time was right. Livermore knew that markets were like living organisms, unpredictable and often irrational. But he believed that by observing price action closely, one could identify the market's inclinations before they became apparent to others. It was this ability to anticipate and react, grounded in the reality of the tape, that set him apart. Yet, this philosophy demanded a steely resolve. It required one to resist the siren call of quick profits, to withstand the pressure of peers chasing fast gains. Livermore's discipline was his fortress against the emotional tides that swept so many investors into ruin. To him, the market was a battlefield, and the tape his most trusted ally. His success was not merely a matter of intellect or strategy, but of temperament. It was his capacity to remain detached, to observe without bias, to let the numbers guide him rather than his own desires or fears. In a world where so many were ruled by emotion, Livermore's cool rationality was a formidable force. This reliance on the tape led Livermore to some of his greatest victories. In 1907, when the market was in turmoil, he watched as the tape revealed the cracks before the crash became apparent. He positioned himself accordingly, emerging with a fortune while others floundered. Again, in 1929, amidst the wreckage of Black Tuesday, the tape guided him through the storm. But there is a bittersweet irony in Livermore's story. While he mastered the market's mechanics, the very discipline that brought him success also demanded a toll. The endless waiting, the solitude of his constant vigilance, the pressure of acting only when the tape dictated, these took a toll on his psyche. The tape never lies, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Behind the numbers, behind Livermore's stoic facade, lay a man grappling with his own demons, a man searching for meaning beyond the relentless pursuit of profit. As we delve deeper into Livermore's world, we see that his battle was not just with the market, but with himself. In the next chapter, we explore how the very qualities that made him successful also sowed the seeds of his downfall. A brilliant strategist, yes, but a man haunted by his own relentless pursuit of perfection. Stay with us as we continue the poignant journey of Jesse Livermore, a man whose life was defined by the tape, and whose legacy lies in the lessons he left behind. New York City. The heartbeat of global finance. A place where fortunes are made and lost before the ink on the morning paper can dry. Jesse Livermore arrived here with a heart full of ambition and pockets that, for the moment, felt lighter than his dreams. He had conquered the bucket shops, those shadowy corners of the financial world. But this was different. This was the real stage. The trading floors of New York in the early 1900s were a cacophony of shouts, the scribbling of pencils on paper, the clattering of telegraph machines. Livermore found himself amidst this chaos, the real exchanges, where the stakes were higher and the rules unforgiving. In those early days, Livermore learned a harsh truth. The market, in its grandeur and complexity, was not like the bucket shop tape that had been his playground. The tickers moved in ways he hadn't fully anticipated. His instincts, honed in simpler environments, faltered. His first trades on the real exchanges were failures. He watched as the market moved against him, his positions buckling under the pressure of forces he couldn't yet command. Confidence, so easily swayed by the allure of past victories, was shaken. He was learning that knowing the direction of the market was only a fraction of the puzzle. Timing, it turned out, was everything. Being right at the wrong time was like being wrong. A lesson that would cost him dearly, not just once but several times. He placed his bets, certain of the market's path, only to watch his capital evaporate as the market took its time to align with his predictions or chose a different course altogether. Livermore went broke. And then, with a gambler's stubbornness, he came back. He watched his fortunes rise and fall like a ship tossed on turbulent seas. By his mid-20s, he was riding a financial rollercoaster, a pattern that would define much of his life. Boom and bust. A cycle as predictable as it was destructive. Through failure, Livermore learned a crucial lesson. Never average down on a losing position. It was a rule he would later inscribe into his personal trading commandments. When the market moved against him, it was trying to tell him something. That he was wrong. Or at least, early. But the line between the two is thin and often invisible until it's too late. He borrowed money from a broker to get back into the game, his determination undeterred by debt or defeat. The market was his adversary and his muse, a puzzle to be solved and a foe to be conquered. He was broken in debt, yet more resolved than ever to succeed. Each failure was a lesson, an indelible mark on his evolving trading philosophy. Livermore was learning to listen to the market instead of imposing his will upon it. He was beginning to understand that in the world of trading, humility is as valuable as insight. If the market teaches anything, it's patience. Livermore's early years in New York were a crucible, burning away the naivete of his bucket shop days, forging a man more attuned to the rhythms and caprices of the real markets. A man who understood that timing is not just about when to enter but when to exit. A man who knew that sometimes, to win, you must first learn how to lose. And lose he did, spectacularly, repeatedly. But each loss was a step toward mastery, a page in a manual unwritten and learned only through experience. The market was a harsh but effective teacher, and Livermore, a willing if battered student. The line between genius and folly is often drawn by those who stand in the ruins of their own ambitions. For Jesse Livermore, these early years were a testament to resilience and an unyielding spirit. He fell, but each time, he rose again. Broken but not beaten. Armed with newfound wisdom and a relentless drive. In the heart of New York, amidst the swirling chaos of the exchanges, Jesse Livermore was not just trading stocks. He was trading innocence for experience, hubris for humility. The stakes were higher, the lessons harder, but for Livermore, the game had only just begun. As he stood on the threshold of greatness or ruin, the lessons of timing and discipline echoed in his mind. The markets had humbled him, yet he remained undeterred. He knew the path to success was paved with failures, each step more valuable than the last. And so, with a deep breath and borrowed funds, he stepped back into the arena, ready to face the market once more. For Jesse Livermore, the thrill of the chase outweighed the fear of the fall. But the market had more to teach, and he was not yet done learning its capricious ways. In the end, the market would not just test his skill but his very soul. And Jesse Livermore was determined to prove that he could master both. The stage was set for his next great act. But as with all things in his life, the outcome was far from certain. The story of Jesse Livermore was only beginning. The lessons of the past would soon face the trials of the future. An era of unprecedented opportunity and danger awaited. And Livermore, ever the gambler, was ready to play. As he moved forward, he knew that each trade was a gamble with destiny, and the dice were about to roll once again. In the early days of October 1907, the air on Wall Street was electric, charged with a tension that could spark at any moment. The market had been riding high, inflated by speculation and fueled by borrowed money. It was a heady time, and everyone seemed to believe the good times would roll on forever. Everyone, that is, except Jesse Livermore. At just 30 years old, Livermore had the extraordinary ability to read the market like a maestro reads a symphony. He didn't see the ebullience that others saw. Instead, he noticed an undercurrent, a pattern of distribution. Large operators were quietly selling their positions into the strength of the market, while unwary small investors continued to buy. To Livermore, it was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. And he decided he wouldn't just watch. He would act. With a resolve hardened by experience, Livermore went short in size. Betting the market would break. It wasn't a gamble, not in his eyes. It was a calculated wager against the euphoria that had blinded so many. A storm was brewing, and he chose to position himself directly in its path. Then, like a lightning strike, it happened. The panic of 1907 descended upon Wall Street, unleashing a cascade of fear and chaos. Stocks plummeted as credit markets seized up, and the financial system teetered on the brink of collapse. The once bustling floor of the New York Stock Exchange was now a frantic scene of pandemonium, where fortunes were lost in the blink of an eye. But for Livermore, the chaos was a symphony he had predicted, and he conducted it with precision. In a matter of days, his bold short positions paid off spectacularly. He walked away with $3 million, a fortune that would be roughly equivalent to $100 million today. For many, it was a testament to his prowess, a demonstration of his almost prescient understanding of market mechanics. Here was a man who had seen what others could not, and he had capitalized on it with deft confidence. But the story of Jesse Livermore and the panic of 1907 doesn't end with a simple triumph. It takes a turn that would etch his name into the annals of financial history. J.P. Morgan, the titan of American finance, recognized the peril that Livermore's actions posed to a fragile system already teetering on the edge. A system that needed stability, not a further push into the abyss. One can only imagine the scene in Livermore's office when an emissary of Morgan himself arrived. The message was clear, yet astonishing. J.P. Morgan was not issuing a command, but a request, a plea, really. Morgan was asking Livermore to cease his short selling, to stop exacerbating the panic that threatened to unravel the very fabric of the American economy. For Livermore, it was a moment of profound significance. Here was the most powerful banker in America, in essence, acknowledging the influence of a single trader from rural Massachusetts. Livermore had become a force that Wall Street could no longer ignore, a man whose decisions could sway the tides of finance. And in a gesture of respect, perhaps even a nod to the extraordinary circumstances, Livermore agreed to Morgan's request. He refrained from further short selling, a move that some might see as acquiescence but was, in reality, a mark of his deep understanding of the larger game. Livermore knew that his actions, while lucrative, were part of a broader tapestry. And sometimes, the most strategic decision is not to play at all. This episode, where the financial establishment had to negotiate with a 30-year-old trader, solidified Jesse Livermore's legend. It was a defining moment that marked him not merely as a maverick trader, but as a pivotal player in the vast theater of Wall Street. In the aftermath of this financial tempest, as the dust settled and markets slowly stabilized, Livermore's name became synonymous with both brilliance and controversy. He had mastered the art of anticipating and profiting from the market's most volatile swings. Yet, he was also aware of the heavy burden that such power carried. A power that, if unchecked, could lead to the unraveling of more than just fortunes. But Livermore was not a man to rest on his laurels. There were more battles to fight, more markets to conquer, and a restless ambition that drove him ever forward. The world of finance was a stage, and he was determined to keep playing his part, even as he knew that the game was as dangerous as it was exhilarating. As we leave the echoes of 1907 behind, one can't help but wonder what paths Livermore would carve next. For him, the markets were not just about money, they were a living, breathing entity. An entity that could bring both glory and ruin. And as we move forward, the next chapter in his life will test him in ways he could scarcely imagine. The stage is set for a drama that unfolds with relentless intensity. A drama that will push Jesse Livermore to the very brink of his own existence. Picture a man, not in the frenzy of the trading floor, but alone at his desk. The room is silent. The only sounds are the ticking of a clock and the rustling of papers. The man is Jesse Livermore, and he is not trading. He is waiting, and in that waiting, he is orchestrating his greatest symphony of patience. Jesse Livermore once said, "It never was my thinking that made the big money for me. It always was my sitting." These words encapsulate a truth so profound, yet so elusive, that even today, traders wrestle with its implications. To sit tight, to wait in a world that glorifies action, rapid decisions, and a constant stream of trades, is an art. An art that Livermore mastered. Imagine the scene, a market buzzing with activity, every trader's heart racing to the beat of ticker-tape machines spitting out endless data. But amid this chaos, Livermore stood apart. His gaze was steady, his demeanor calm. He understood that the real challenge was not in finding the right trade but in holding on to it. This ability to sit tight stems from a deep trust in one's own analysis. Livermore was not swayed by the daily ebbs and flows, the noise that could mislead less disciplined minds. He practiced something called pyramiding, a strategy that involved adding to his winning positions as they confirmed his thesis. It was a method rooted in conviction and patience, qualities that carried him through times when the market seemed hell-bent on proving him wrong. In the modern world of trading, the concept of sitting tight is almost anachronistic. We live in a time of instant information, where news flashes across screens in milliseconds and decisions are made in the blink of an eye. The temptation to act, to respond, to be seen as doing something, is overwhelming. Yet Livermore's approach teaches us that sometimes, the best action is no action at all. Consider the story of the 1907 panic, where Livermore's patience was put to the ultimate test. Having anticipated the crash, he placed his bets and waited. The market fluctuated, taunting him with every tick, but he held firm. When others panicked and sold, Livermore watched silently, knowing the tide would eventually turn in his favor. And when it did, his patience paid off in spades. But his strategy was not without its perils. Holding a position long enough to realize its full potential required nerves of steel and a deep understanding of the market's psychology. Livermore knew that fear and greed could cloud judgment, leading to premature exits from trades that, if left undisturbed, could yield substantial gains. His discipline, the ability to endure discomfort during market corrections, was his edge. Livermore's method also meant never adding to losing trades. He would cut his losses quickly, adhering to his principle that the market can remain irrational longer than one can remain solvent. This discipline was critical to his longevity and success. While others would throw good money after bad, Livermore remained resolute, never compounding a mistake. In a time where every second seems to count, where the pressure to perform can lead to impulsive decisions, Livermore's lesson on sitting tight remains relevant. It is a reminder that patience is not merely the absence of action but a calculated choice in itself. It requires confidence, resilience, and the willingness to endure periods of doubt. This philosophy of sitting still, of waiting for the right moment, extends beyond the world of trading. It speaks to a universal truth, that sometimes, our greatest moves come not from what we do, but from what we choose not to do. Inaction, when informed by wisdom and experience, can be the most powerful action of all. As we reflect on Livermore's legacy, we see a man who understood the profound power of patience. He saw the market for what it truly is, a relentless test of character. To succeed, one must not only be right but must also have the fortitude to sit tight. In our next chapter, we will delve into the volatile years that followed Jesse Livermore's triumphs. A time when his philosophy of patience would be sorely tested by the Roaring Twenties and the catastrophic crash of 1929. A time when the art of sitting still would meet the irresistible force of the Great Depression. As we turn the page, we step into the storm that awaited him, a storm that would challenge every principle he held dear. The year is 1929. The air buzzes with the infectious thrill of the Roaring Twenties. Jazz spills out from packed clubs, and skyscrapers pierce the skyline, aspiring to touch the heavens themselves. Wall Street hums with an electricity that seems to promise endless prosperity. Stocks are the pathway to riches, a one-way ticket to the American dream. From taxi drivers to debutantes, everyone is playing the market, convinced that the only direction is up. But Jesse Livermore sees different shapes in the shadows. He stands at the cusp of his 50s, an age where most have settled into the rhythm of their lives. Yet, for Livermore, life remains a high-stakes game. He studies the ticker tape with the keen eye of a hunter, watching for signs, patterns, whispers from the market that speak only to him. He sees a familiar distribution pattern, one he remembers from 2 decades earlier, when the market crumbled in 1907. The herd is oblivious. But Livermore is attuned to the underlying currents, the tremors beneath the seemingly solid ground. Quietly, methodically, he begins to build his short position in early 1929. It's a move that requires nerve, patience, and an unyielding belief in his instincts. He steps against the tide, accumulating his position in the shadows, while the world dances on the edge of a precipice, blissfully unaware. As the months tick by, the market rises higher and higher still. The buzz on Wall Street is one of invincibility. But Livermore remains unfazed. He holds his course, as if he can already smell the smoke of the coming crash. Then, on October 24th, the music stops. Black Thursday. The ticker tape tells a story of chaos and destruction. Prices tumble, panic spreads like wildfire, and the once unshakable foundations of Wall Street begin to crack. Livermore watches from the sidelines, and his short position grows fat with profit. But the real reckoning comes 5 days later, on Black Tuesday, October 29th. It's a day that will be seared into the nation's memory. The Dow loses 25% of its value in 2 days. Fortunes are obliterated in the blink of an eye. Banks falter, and the dreams of millions crumble to dust. Jesse Livermore walks away with a fortune beyond imagination, approximately $100 million, an equivalent of $1.7 billion today. Newspapers crown him the Great Bear of Wall Street, a moniker both celebratory and damning. In those first breathless reports, he is a hero, a genius. But as the dust settles, the narrative shifts. Editorials begin to whisper that he is to blame. His massive short selling is seen as the spark that ignited the inferno. The newfound wealth does little to shield him from the storm brewing around him. Death threats arrive in the mail, sinister and unnerving. Strangers curse him in the street. He hires bodyguards, not as a symbol of his triumph, but out of fearful necessity. Fame and infamy have become indistinguishable. Yet, for all the chaos, this moment is the zenith of Livermore's power. He stands alone atop the financial world, a solitary giant casting a long shadow over Wall Street. His ability to read the market, to act on instinct where others flounder, has brought him unparalleled success. But victory is a double-edged sword. The same instincts that allowed him to break Wall Street will soon lead him towards his own unraveling. Success, intoxicating and absolute, can blind even the sharpest eyes. Livermore, despite his wealth, is a man of deep complexity and contradiction. His life, a relentless pursuit of the next big win, leaves little room for contentment. He is celebrated and reviled in equal measure, a paradox as confounding as the markets he mastered. With each triumph, he believes he has found the secret to untold riches, yet each success sows the seeds of his next downfall. As the world grapples with the economic devastation of the Great Depression, Livermore basks in the glow of his latest triumph. But beneath the surface, cracks begin to form. The man who mastered the market has yet to master himself. The future holds challenges that no amount of money can easily solve. Jesse Livermore, the man who broke Wall Street, stands at the precipice of his own destiny. The stage is set for the next act in his extraordinary, tragic life. And as he gazes out over the city from his lofty perch, perhaps he wonders, what lies beyond the pinnacle of success? For Livermore, the greatest challenge still looms ahead, unseen, waiting in the shadows. As the sun sets on this chapter of his life, one can't help but feel that the story of Jesse Livermore is far from over. The man who seemed invincible will soon learn that the greatest battle is not with the market, but with oneself. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, turbulent sea. Each wave rises with promise before collapsing into chaos. Now, imagine trying to predict those waves, every swell, every crash. That's what Jesse Livermore faced each day on Wall Street, a master navigator on an ocean of uncertainty. But even the most skilled mariner must contend with the storms within. Livermore often spoke of three emotions as the greatest dangers to any trader: fear, hope, and greed. Simple words, but their power is profound. These emotions, he believed, were like sirens, luring traders to their doom with seductive whispers. And he was not immune. Hope, Livermore wrote, is the most treacherous. It masquerades as optimism, as patience. But in truth, it's a refusal to accept reality. Think of a trader clutching a losing stock, convinced that if they just hold on, the market will reverse. They tell themselves it's only a matter of time. Livermore knew this lie well. He had seen it play out in his own life, where hope had turned decisions into desperation. In the market, hope doesn't just blind you. It binds you, chaining you to the mast as the storm tears your ship apart. Then there's greed, a far more beguiling adversary. Livermore learned this firsthand during his greatest triumphs. It starts innocently enough, with a winning position. The numbers turn green, the account balance swells, and with it, an insatiable hunger for more. Why sell today when tomorrow promises even greater riches? But markets are fickle lovers, and in the blink of an eye, gains can turn to losses. Livermore knew the agony of watching profit slip away, of a sure thing turned sour by the very human desire for just a little bit more. And finally, fear, the most primal of all. It's that cold, creeping sensation as a position moves against you. For Livermore, it was the voice that whispered, "Get out now, before it's too late." Fear can save you, but it can also paralyze you, keeping you from acting when action is needed most. Livermore told stories of being shaken out of positions, only to watch them soar without him. Every trader, every person, knows the taste of regret that follows fear's embrace. These emotions, Livermore asserted, are not aberrations. They are not flaws. They are perfectly rational responses to the chaos of the market. But therein lies their danger. Because the market, with its relentless ebb and flow, is designed to exploit these human weaknesses. It coaxes traders into holding when they should sell, into selling when they should hold. It is a game, but a game that plays us just as much as we play it. Livermore, despite his profound understanding, was not immune. He chronicled his thoughts, capturing his battles with these emotions in journals and books. He was a man who could see the traps laid out before him, who could articulate the dangers with clinical precision. And yet, he was a man who fell for the very illusions he warned against. His life was a testament to the seductive power of hope, greed, and fear. He amassed fortunes only to lose them because these emotions, like uninvited guests, would slip into his mind and steer him away from logic and reason. The market is a mirror, reflecting not just our financial acumen but also our emotional resilience. In the end, Livermore's story is a cautionary tale. A reminder that while intelligence and strategy are vital, they are not enough to save us from ourselves. Mastering the market demands more than knowledge, it requires mastery over the self. As we close this chapter, we are left with an image of Livermore, standing once again on that shore, staring out into the tumultuous sea. He was a man who knew the waves like few others, yet was undone by the tides within. The storm is relentless, but it is not unforgiving. The question remains, how do we navigate these waters without losing our way? Perhaps the answer lies not in conquering the market, but in understanding the depths of our own minds. For Livermore, that understanding came too late. And so we turn the page, edging closer to the final chapters of his life, where hope flickers, fear whispers, and greed beckons one last time. In the twilight of his career, Jesse Livermore found himself standing on the precipice of a legacy he could feel slipping away. Just years earlier, he had been the master of Wall Street, the man who had outwitted the market when others faltered. But by the mid-1930s, the landscape was changing, and Livermore, the great speculator, was tumbling into a profound abyss. It seemed almost inconceivable. How could a man who had amassed such wealth and knowledge fall so completely? Yet his life was becoming a maelstrom of personal and financial chaos. His fourth bankruptcy in 1934 was not just a loss of money, it was a public acknowledgement of his unraveling. $2.5 million in debt, the debts of a man who once was the richest on Wall Street. The carnage was not limited to his finances. His marriage was a battlefield, punctuated by constant strife and sorrow, and his mind, once sharp and unyielding, was clouded by despair. Livermore had attempted to corner the cotton market, a bold move echoing his previous successes, but this time it backfired spectacularly. The market shifted, the numbers turned against him, and he was left holding losses he couldn't reverse. The failure was not just financial, it signaled a deeper fracture in his once unerring ability to read the market. His trading, once disciplined and precise, became erratic, a stark departure from the principles he had once held sacred. This was Jesse Livermore, the man who wrote the rules that traders still follow today. He had always emphasized the importance of sticking to your plan, cutting losses, and never trading on tips. Yet, in a tragic twist of irony, Livermore himself began to violate these very tenets. He averaged down, doubling down on losing positions in a desperate attempt to prove himself right. He took tips from friends, trading on whispers and rumors instead of the clear, cold logic of the tape he had once revered. Why? Historians and psychologists still debate the reasons. Some say it was the heavy shadow of clinical depression, a mental illness that clouded his once brilliant mind, sapping his judgment and will. Others suggest that the world had simply moved on. The Wall Street that Livermore had dominated in the Roaring Twenties was giving way to a new era of technological advancement and complex algorithms. The tape, that magical, rhythmic story of stocks, was being replaced by a new kind of logic, one that Livermore couldn't decode. As he struggled with this shifting landscape, Livermore poured his energies into writing. His final years were spent crafting a small book, How to Trade in Stocks, a last effort to distill his lifetime of wisdom into words. He tried to capture the essence of his trading philosophy, the lessons learned from both triumphs and humiliations. It was a work born of hope and desperation, an attempt to leave behind something enduring as his own life seemed to crumble. The book was published in 1940, a slender volume that sought to illuminate the darkness for those who would follow in his footsteps. But Jesse Livermore would never see how the world received it. On November 28, 1940, he took his own life, leaving behind a note that spoke of loneliness, despair, and a sense of failure that not even his towering achievements could erase. Livermore's story is one of brilliance and tragedy, a cautionary tale written in both the numbers on a ticker tape and the silences between them. His final fall was not just the collapse of a fortune but the dissolution of a man who had once seemed invincible. As his life ended, the question lingered, what could have been if only the shadows had not closed in? Next, we look to the legacy of Jesse Livermore, the lessons he left, and the myths that endure. What does his story teach us about ambition, risk, and the human spirit? His tale is not yet finished. It lives on in the echo of every market crash and every ambitious trade. The story of Jesse Livermore, the man who broke Wall Street and his own heart, awaits its final chapter. Amidst the cacophony of the New York Stock Exchange, where fortunes can turn on a whisper, Jesse Livermore's voice still echoes. Despite his tragic end, Livermore's legacy is etched into the very fabric of trading psychology and technical analysis. His rules, forged in the crucible of personal triumphs and failures, have become bedrock principles for traders across the globe. Imagine the frenetic energy of a modern-day crypto exchange, where volatility is not just expected, it's the norm. A world not too distant from the bucket shops of the 1920s, where Livermore first sharpened his edge. In both arenas, the same human impulses reign supreme: greed, fear, and the intoxicating rush of a quick profit. Livermore would see these parallels clearly. He'd recognize the cycles, the euphoria and panic that drive markets up and down in wild, unpredictable swings. Consider the GameStop short squeeze of 2021, a spectacle of momentum and mania. For Livermore, it would have been an all-too-familiar scene. A trap set by the crowd's fevered pitch, ripe for those attuned to the rhythms of mass psychology. He knew the danger of following the herd, the peril of jumping in without a plan. His rule was simple: trade with the trend, never against it. Let the market guide you, never the other way around. Livermore's most enduring lesson? Cut your losses quickly, without mercy. In the chaos of trading, it's the discipline to admit one's mistakes that often separates survival from ruin. He understood that the market doesn't care about ego or stubbornness. Holding on to a losing position, hoping for a reversal, is a siren song that has lured many to their demise. In today's markets, where digital trading platforms make it easier than ever to chase losses, Livermore's advice rings truer than ever. The discipline to cut losses, to sever the tie cleanly, remains a trader's most potent weapon. And then there's the temptation to average down, to throw good money after bad in the hope of salvaging a poor decision. He learned, painfully, that this was a fool's errand, one that leads only to greater despair. Instead, Livermore advocated for adding only to winning positions. Let your winners run, he would say, for they are your true allies in the market's battlefield. Yet, for all his wisdom, Livermore's life was a testament to the gap between knowing and doing. He set rules that he couldn't always follow when pressures mounted. The very human struggle of translating theory into practice. His own downfall a poignant reminder that knowledge alone isn't enough. It's the execution, under duress, that defines success. Livermore also taught the virtue of patience. The market presents opportunities, yes, but not every day. He warned against the impatience that drives so many to trade compulsively. Wait for the high-probability moment, he would advise, savoring the anticipation of the perfect strike like an artist waiting for the exact moment of inspiration. Today's traders, bombarded by information and real-time data, would do well to heed this lesson. To step back, observe, and act only when the stars align. In our present world, social media amplifies the same crowd psychology Livermore chronicled over a century ago. A single tweet can ignite a buying frenzy or a selling panic, echoing the whispers of the trading floor in Livermore's era. His insights into the mind of the market mob remain eerily relevant. The tools may have changed, but human nature, with all its flaws and wonders, remains much the same. The irony that defines Livermore's legacy is profound. The greatest trader in history, a man whose strategies are now gospel, failed to adhere to them when it mattered most. In this, he offers not just a template for trading, but a mirror to our own vulnerabilities. To know what is right, yet struggle to act upon it under pressure, is a conflict we all face, in markets and beyond. As we sift through the remnants of Livermore's life, we find his broader relevance. Not as a success story to emulate, but as the most honest, most complete case study in market psychology ever written. His story is a cautionary tale. An eternal reminder of the risks inherent in both trading and the human condition. In the end, Jesse Livermore left behind more than just a set of rules. He left a legacy of wisdom and warning. A legacy that challenges us to look beyond the charts and numbers. To understand the delicate dance of emotion and reason that defines every trader's journey. And so we are left with a question, a mystery at the heart of Livermore's life: how can one man, so brilliant and insightful, fall victim to the very traps he warned against? As we ponder that, we turn towards the final chapter of his story, a chapter that seeks closure not just for Livermore, but for all who dare to walk the perilous path he trod. The hotel cloakroom door swings quietly open. Inside, a man sits alone, surrounded by silence. The weight of the world rests on his shoulders, invisible yet palpable. Jesse Livermore, the man who had once been king of Wall Street, sits with a small notebook in his hand. The pages are filled with scribbles, reminders of market truths he believed in above all else. And yet, here he is. The lessons he knew, the truths he taught, they now seem like ghosts, haunting yet unable to guide him in this final hour. He knew everything there was to know about the markets. He had lived every lesson, learned every nuance. His journey had been one of extraordinary highs and devastating lows. Jesse had codified the rules, written them down with unyielding clarity. Yet, those same rules now lay impotent in the face of relentless personal demons. In the end, Jesse Livermore's story is not merely a tragedy about trading. It is a profound exploration of the human mind under sustained pressure. It is about the gap, often a chasm, between what we know and what we do. Between the rules we believe in and the emotions that override them when the stakes are at their highest. Imagine knowing the market's language better than anyone. Understanding its rhythms, its whispers, its shouts. Yet also knowing that, despite all of that understanding, the market cares nothing for you. It never did. It moves, it breathes, it crashes, it soars, all indifferent to the individual lives it touches. Jesse Livermore spent his life trying to understand this beast. He confronted it daily, trying to make sense of its chaotic dance. And in doing so, he left us with the most honest account of financial psychology ever written. His rules were simple, yet forged in the furnace of personal failure and faint glimmers of triumph. Cut losses quickly. Let profits run. Silence the noise, stick to the fundamentals, and never let emotions dictate decisions. But the human heart is a wild creature. It recoils from pain, seeks comfort, and often strays from the path of logic in moments of fear. Jesse knew this better than anyone. He experienced it firsthand, knew the betrayal of his own mind, as the emotional tide swept him away from the shore of reason. He was not just fighting the market. He was fighting himself. And in the end, it was not the market that defeated him. It was the weight of his own humanity, the relentless inner battle. All the knowledge in the world could not save him from the chaos within. The cloakroom is silent now. The notebook rests on the table, a testament to a life lived in pursuit of order in an inherently disorderly world. Jess's story is a mirror, reflecting the eternal struggle between knowledge and emotion, between intention and action. As we leave the man sitting in that quiet room, we are left with his legacy, a brutal, honest, and invaluable guide to the psychology of finance. These were his rules. The rest is up to you. The room fades into darkness. Silence. The curtain falls. The market does not care about you. It never did. But Jesse Livermore spent his whole life trying to understand it. And in doing so, he left us the most honest account of financial psychology ever written. These were his rules. The rest is up to you.